It's NAIDOC Week and it's celebrated across Australia, highlighting the history, culture and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. This year the theme is Heal Country. Joining me live is Glenn Brennan, Gomeroi man and partner at KPMG Indigenous Services. Great to see you this morning, Glenn.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolute pleasure. Now, you wrote about NAIDOC Week being your favourite time of the year in the Australian this week. What does NAIDOC mean to you?
I think it's just a real sense, on one hand, to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia, but there's this piece around the excellence, that we're doing great things in a range of, forums that, potentially we haven't been in the past. So, and it's also that chance around the celebration of culture. So, and our culture remains strong. And I think, in many ways, that goes some way to sort of what's important, the theme for this year's NAIDOC Week.
Absolutely, and the theme is Heal Country, which it's a great theme and so beautifully worded on the website of NAIDOC Week, described as when we talk about country, it is spoken of like a person. What does this theme mean to you?
Well, I think that, in the past, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we don't own country. We're custodians of the country. We're tasked with looking after it. And, healing country sometimes is a very important part of that. I think it's one of the great things about NAIDOC and the theme this year is healing country, because that shouldn't just be something that Indigenous Australians are tasked with. That should be something that all Australians are tasked with. Healing country, how can we make sure that we look after this wonderful nation and landmass that we're part of, and how we can make sure that we leave it in just as good a condition as we found it for our future generations. And I think that's a big part of it, it's that we see it as something that is, needs to be looked after. We need to be deliberate in how we go about looking after it. And country is also a part of our identity. This is who we are. And I think that's, going forward, I'd love for that to be something that all Australians feel a part of.
Absolutely, well said. And you also wrote in The Australian that your dad typifies what NAIDOC Week is and his incredible contributions. Tell us about your dad.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty biased, right? But Dad was a builder and he plied his trade in the 70s, 80s and 90s out in northwest New South Wales and then sort of that Narrabri region. But, he wouldn't have known back in the day that he was sort of a bit of a trailblazer by being an Indigenous owner of a business and getting out there and using that business to sort of create opportunities for his family. Being a builder was the best job in the world for me dad, because it allowed him to sort of buy a house and raise his family well beyond the confines of the Moree Aboriginal Reserve where he grew up. So he's sort of seen that as the way that he could pass on opportunities and success to his kids. And, I'm very, grateful for the work he does. These days I think you'll find that a bowls bag has replaced the tool belt. He's well into his 70s now, Dad, but he was just a great trailblazer and a great role model for me and my brothers and sisters that, it's possible but that real sense of, your work business can create opportunities and you can pass that on to the next generation.
Well, it certainly has. I mean, you've been an NRL player and now KPMG Indigenous Business Service lead partner. What inspired you with these careers?
Look, you'd like to say, Janie, that they were all well thought out, but I never in my wildest dreams as a little boy that sort of grew up on the outskirts of Narrabri, I believed that, I'd be working in corporate Australia. So I think that it encouraged me to have the building blocks to take advantage of opportunities when they presented themselves. And I think education is the great part of that. So, when opportunities come, you go, geez, I wouldn't mind trying that. And to take risk, but to take calculated risk regarding your career. But, the thing that draws me to those careers, and certainly what I do today, is the ability to be able to help our people, in particular help Indigenous business owners, help them grow and prosper as they look to take advantage of the new opportunities now that are really part of the Australian landscape for Indigenous entrepreneurs.
And the federal government, Glenn, in 2015 Indigenous procurement policy, they agreed to divert 3% of its yearly procurement spend to Indigenous owned and operated businesses. State and some local governments have followed suit, and in fact so are corporates. Are you satisfied with this outcome, and what does it mean?
Yeah, look, I am. It's about 6 year old now, I think. So there's always room for improvement. But listen, in Indigenous affairs, there's no shortage of car wrecks of public policy that haven't worked. But this one is in my mind, is a real green shoot that we should look to sort of improve and make it better. What it's done is that it's bred a new generation of Indigenous business people. And I think that, what was missing in the past was demand. So we could have Indigenous businesses, but unless people are going to buy their products and services, we will never be able to get the scale and ultimately the transformational opportunity that we desire. And certainly now with the government agencies, you mentioned the federal government and state and local governments, but now corporate Australia coming on that, there's a better part of sort of, over, I think it's over $3 or $4 billion worth of opportunities now. And we're seeing Indigenous businesses scale up to do that, right? We're seeing new businesses start. We're seeing ones that already exist really working out how they can get bigger and how they can get bigger safely, because how you grow does matter, as well as forming joint ventures where they look to sort of partner with another mainstream business so that they can use their back end or their products and services to be able to grow. And I think for me, it's really important because we know that Indigenous businesses are likely to, 100% more likely to employ other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So, that they end up going on not only just creating opportunities for themselves, but creating jobs. And I think that's a real sort of important point that we should make with the growing sort of Indigenous business sector, for want of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, well, this week we heard the fantastic announcements of Paddy Mills as Team Australia's flag bearer for the Tokyo Olympics alongside Kate Campbell and Ash Barty into the Wimbledon finals, all during NAIDOC week. I mean, talk about role models.
Yeah, they're great role models. And, I think it's been 40 years since, and it was Yvonne Goolagong-Cawley, right? So that was the last sort of Australian woman in the final. And we've seen what a role model she's been and has been for many years. Ash Barty, we're all going for you. But, the best thing is that those people unite Australia. I think most of us will be staying up late and watching that game. Well, I will be. So, I think Paddy Mills, good Canberra boy, grew up there.
Go on, tell us about your
history. I always say Paddy Mills should have been a Canberra Raiders player, not a San Antonio Spurs, but he's done pretty well, so we'll give him that. But, great family, the Mills family. And Paddy Mills has started a foundation now. The Mills Foundation is, launched the Indigenous Basketball Association where, they really put some of his own money into it. And I think what we're seeing is more of these sort of role models now really thinking through, well, what is it that they can do to make sure that they make the next generation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children have more opportunities than what they had. And that starts to sound a lot like what my dad was doing, and that's starting to sound a lot what NAIDOC Week's all about. So I think it's just another sort of great proof point around these role models that we now have that are sort of in these areas. Not to mention, by the way, we have Kid Laroi now with the Justin Bieber song. Kid Laroi is one of my countrymen from Gomeroi people, obviously, will claim him as well. But we've got people, Indigenous and people achieving excellence all over the globe. And I think that's fantastic during NAIDOC Week.
It certainly is wonderful to see. And yes, let's hope Ash Barty wins the Wimbledon final tonight. But Glenn Brennan, absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining us on Weekend Live.
No, thank you. And thanks for having me. Go well.